In this video, we will review the Buyer Designated Representation Agreement, also known as OREA Form 371. This document is the legal contract between the buyer and the brokerage. It officially establishes the buyer as a client and, crucially, names you as the designated representative responsible for their interests. By signing this, you commit to acting in the client's best interests and you owe them a fiduciary duty of care. At Zolo, we operate under a designated representation model. This means that while the contract is technically between the brokerage and the client, you are identified as the specific agent and the only agent within the brokerage who is responsible for that client's representation. Now let's look at how to actually complete this form. Starting at the top, enter the name, address, phone, and fax number for both the brokerage and the client. This identifies the two primary parties in the agreement. Now the next field is critical. This is the designated representative field. This is where you enter your name to establish designated representation. Since Zolo policy requires all agents to operate under the designated representation model, this field must always be completed to ensure the client knows exactly who is advocating for them. Next, set the commencement and expiry dates of the agreement. The commencement date is when your representation officially begins. The end date is negotiated between you and your client, and it can really be as long as you want, but in this example we've used a 60-day term. Once the dates are set, have the buyer initial the acknowledgement bubble. This confirms that they understand that the duration of the agreement is negotiable and not a fixed industry standard. This is required under TRESA. Now define the scope of your services. You must specify the type of property and the geographic area that you'll be searching in. For this example, we've entered residential property and Greater Toronto Area. Next, the buyer must initial the next bubble to confirm they are not currently under an exclusive contract with any other agent or brokerage. And this is important because it indicates that they are going to be working exclusively with you for the terms of this agreement. In the commission section, enter the agreed upon rate. In this case, we've used 2.5% of the sale price. Both you and the buyer will initial the bottom of this section, and also ensure that the buyer also initials in this bubble to acknowledge that all commissions are subject to applicable taxes. And next is your holdover period. This is important as well because this protects your work for a set number of days after the agreement expires. If the client purchases a property that you introduced them to during the contract term, then they could still owe you a commission, provided that they're not represented by a new brokerage under a new agreement at that time. We've set this to 30 days. So this means that within 30 days of the expiry date of your agreement, if your client goes and purchases a home as an unrepresented buyer, then they still could owe you a commission. Unfortunately, if they do have a new agreement with someone else at that time and they are under representation, then they wouldn't really owe you a commission. But this holdover period just ensures that the client isn't using you to gain access to properties and then going and purchasing the property on their own to avoid a commission. So this is a crucial aspect of the agreement. Make sure to carefully review all terms and conditions with your client and have them initial at the bottom of every page. On the final page, the client signs to confirm their understanding and commitment. You sign to bind yourself as the designated representative. You'll also sign the insurance declaration to confirm that you're properly covered, and the client signs one final time at the bottom to acknowledge receipt of the signed copy. Finally, Schedule A must be included. This outlines the specific services that you will provide to the client. While Zolo pre-populates this with common services, it's your responsibility to review them, remove any services that you won't be performing, and add any unique value adds that you offer. Both you and the client must initial the bottom of this page as well. As you can see, this Buyer Designated Representation Agreement is a critical form that defines your working relationship with the client. It formally designates you as their specific representative acting in their best interests and designates them as your client. It formalizes the length of your working relationship and the work that you will do for them. And it also is an important step in protecting your commission. Make sure to complete this form for every client and always complete the designated representative fields.